Hello, welcome to List Off. I am Nat.
And I'm Ozzy. And this week we're doing our top 5 smells.
hmm
Smells. It's quite a
Uh,
broad thing.
it's a very broad thing, but in order to do it, you've kind of got to be you've got to go deep, haven't you, to get to the heart of it. Do you feel you've been successful in selecting your smells?
I think they're representative of the smells that I like. But the thing about smells is I don't feel like your brain retains them very well or categorizes them very well. Because often you'll smell something, you'll be like, I love that smell. I didn't know I love that smell. And then it'll come around again, a year later, and you'll be like, I love that smell. But I can't keep it in mind necessarily. So there's
Hmm.
definitely some smells I love that I haven't thought of.
I think some people have better smell retention. Like I think, and also I think I'm perhaps more likely to remember bad smells than nice ones,
Is
and
that is
they're the
that
ones
because
that
you make more bad smells than nice
yeah,
ones?
I make more bad smells, so I retain them. But like certainly a bad smell is one that burns into my memory and indeed my nostril hair. Um, um, but like I think I'm quite bad compiling this list. It was quite interesting because you were suggesting it for the last few weeks, and to me it always seemed like a really hard one. Like smells, that's too hard. And then I did it fairly swiftly, came up with a list, and I've been kind of chopping and changing it today as I've been kind of selecting them and getting rid of other ones. But I think my brain is bad at identifying smells, like, or I've got an incuriosity to smells. Like I can go, that's nice. I don't quite know what it is that why I haven't gone to the point of identifying. For example, fragrances. I like a nice smell, but it's not like I go, oh, what is that? It's just that smells nice, and
Right.
that doesn't smell
So you're
nice.
not labeling it. You're just experiencing. You're living in the smell.
Exactly. But it made me think I could probably have a better job of identifying some fragrances. I don't know how important I consider a smell to be. And yet, I would say that smells more than anything is probably a good kind of Proustian flashback to
Oh
a
yeah.
time and a place.
You can remember smells from like before you can have actual memories. Like you can get a smell that reminds you of something that happened 35 years ago, and you had no
Absolutely.
idea that you've still got that smell tagged in your brain. That's
Yeah.
astonishing. That's astonishing. It's like the great Fresh Prince of Bel-Air said. Um, he said, when I think back, it makes me wonder how the smell from a grill could spark up nostalgia. I always used to think that was the smell from a girl could spark up nostalgia, which was weird from an almost grown man. Your ability to smell comes from specialized sensory cells called olfactory sensory neurons, which are found in a small patch of tissue high inside the nose. Each olfactory neuron has one odor receptor. Microscopic molecules released by substances around us stimulate these receptors and send messages to your brain, which identifies the smells, or not in your case.
hmm
But that is microscopic molecules released by substances around us. That's particles. That's what particles are. That's the science behind it.
I think also it's made some of my answers what I think of as kind of bland. I think I would have preferred them to be really specific. I've got a couple of quite specific ones, or have I? No, I'd say only one. Only my number five is specific, but I would have preferred them to be very specific smells.
Well, I think my number five is quite bland. This was suggested originally by Tom Harris of
hmm
Buenos Aires, and Tom is on YouTube. You can find the literary misadventures of Torn Hams. Yeah, it's Torn Hams because when you write his name, if you if you because
Put the
R and
R
and
and the N.
they run together. That's good.
Yeah.
But he's doing fighting fantasy game books, live streaming them, going through them with like all different cameras, so you can see his dice rolls and his pencil marks and the book and his face, and he's done all the music for it. It's like composed whole like John Carpenter style soundtracks for the whole thing. It's incredible. Check him out. I'll put a link in the in the thingy. But thanks for the smell. He gave us a lot of ideas, and smells is
Thanks
probably
for the smells.
Thanks for the smells. A lot of good ideas, but smells has got to do smells. Smells is great.
Oh, I like the idea of smells. I'm attracted to smells as a concept, but I thought it was difficult. But we'll see. We'll see. Some of mine I feel are quite obvious, and some are more specific.
Do you remember when was it Children in Need did smell-o-vision?
Mm-hmm.
And you had to get the little scratch and sniff book to read along with and smell while you were watching the TV on the Friday night.
Yeah.
Did
I do it? Yeah. Nice idea though, smell-o-vision.
I did it, definitely. There was like a David Attenborough bit at the beginning in smell-o-vision with bugs.
What does David Attenborough smell of?
Like soap and talcum powder and Murray mints.
And you can hear more about David Attenborough on our top 5 Daves list.
That's true. That's true.
Find it where you found this.
All right, you gonna start us off for your number 5?
I'm gonna start it off. My number 5 is Mossman, the the Masters of the Universe action figure from 1985, and I came up with this after I'd already made my list, and I liked it because how specific it was. Because I was sort of trying to think of things where I've kind of obsessively smelt something, and that came out in 85. I did the research today, and whether it came out in the UK at the same time or I guess within about 6 months of that, say 86. So I'm going to be 6 or 7 years old when I would have acquired a Mossman action figure. And Mossman is a baddie in the Masters of the Universe series. And even at the age of 6 or 7, I was aware that Mossman was basically Beastman just repainted. But what was great about the Mossman action figure, it had like a layer of fur on it that just used to smell a bit. And I just recall sniffing this action figure more than I played with it. It was seldom far away from my nose, as I just constantly smell this strange scented. And I've looked it up. It is apparently, it's pine scented. So I guess it's like when you have like a pine scented thing in your car or something. But it was one of those very kind of addictive smells that as a kid, my Mossman would be like, just like very close to my nose, as I just spend a lot of time just sniffing this action figure. I found out today as well that it was a counter to, at the same time they had a character called Stinkor that had a similar principle where they but Stinkor was patchouli oil, had put patchouli oil into its smell of it. To kind of put people off, and it was sort of, and it's painted. I think that was also a repaint of another action figure, but the patchouli oil, and it's given a sort of black and white colouring to make it
like
look like a skunk.
Yeah.
But patchouli oil, I can't kind of bring to mind as a smell.
Oh,
but that was like they sort of describe it as musky. So your Stinkor was kind of a bit like, oh, that's not a nice smell.
But you say that that's Mattel throwing some serious shade at all the people who choose to smell of patchouli oil and walk around with patchouli oil scent on them. Like
bet.
You know,
they're
Mattel
saying you
like,
stink.
You are a bad guy and you stink like a skunk, which is harsh.
Yeah, but they're saying if you have like a pine scented car, you're all right. Although Mossman as well is a villain, but I can tell you that
but he's a nice
Mossman was. I found it incredibly nice smelling. Do you have any smelling toys? Did you have any toys that you can particularly remember the smell of?
I haven't got it on my list, but I like a latexy smell, like a boglin.
Right.
A boglin would smell good.
Gotcha.
Like a latexy toy.
I had like this. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly. I also had like the Rancor monster from Return of the Jedi.
Right.
I think if you like basically sniffed into its mouth, I can remember a sort of kind of quite sweet vanilla-y smell to it. I guess it was something to do with the plastic or something.
Mm-hmm.
Of this very specific.
You wouldn't. That doesn't seem fitting though to me. The idea that the Rancor's mouth would smell good is definitely not in keeping with the real in
with the
universe
cannon.
thing. Yeah, I don't think.
But like that's how I remember it actually having quite a nice smell. Something about the plastic of it. But I guess that's it. That kind of things that aren't really supposed to smell nice, but that have a sort of fascination. I think the pine scented thing probably is a nice smelling thing, and certainly as a kid, I kind of couldn't get enough of it.
Mossman, amazing. Never had Mossman, so I didn't sniff him. I didn't get addicted to sniffing Mossman as a kid.
Hmm.
My number 5 is a probably relatively common one, but it's honeysuckle. Honeysuckle, I mean, I haven't done my honeysuckle research, but it's a creeping plant like a vine, with flowers that smell honey-ish. You know, like a lovely nectary smell, and we have it growing over from the next door nursery into the area where we park our bikes, where our bin is. It really improves the bin smell. And my mum grew it growing up and stuff. It's beautiful, beautiful smell. And of all
So it's a honey smelling.
it's you can see why it's called honeysuckle. It's like a clever name for it, but it's a more refreshing than a honey smell. It's like a honey. If you imagine a kind of honey nectar light smell, unless you stick your nose right up in it. You should, like most flowers that smell nice. If you go and smell that, you go, you know what I mean? Like that's not good. It's not going to smell good like that. It's too much. It's like wearing perfume. So you got to sort of walk past it and be like,
Sure.
that's good. You got to catch it on the breeze, on the summer breeze. So honeysuckle,
Like
I
a
would have
crunchy?
like a crunchy.
Hmm.
I like a crunchy in close up.
No, does it smell like a crunchy?
Does it smell like a crunchy? Does it smell like a crunchy? It's no, it doesn't smell like a crunchy. Because crunchy
Okay.
has chocolate around the outside and stuff, and that has a much more sort of burnt sugar smell to it. I don't think it smells like a crunchy. It smells like fresh and flowery, but with a honey sweet tone. So I really like jasmine as well, but I'm having honeysuckle as my flower pick.
Okay.
It's a good one.
Okay. Top of the flowers.
Top of the flower smells for me. It's a good looking flower as well, but it does generate quite a lot of sort of dead vine build up over the years. So, it takes some work to deal with. Needs to keep you in check. Lovely smell
Okay.
in the evening. Lovely.
I wish I knew. Like it does. I feel slightly jealous because you're quite a horticulturalist. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do a bit of gardening,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's a part of my life. Like when people talk about plants and flowers and smells of things, it does feel quite alien to me a lot of times. Like I smell a flower, rarely, or as they say, rarely do I take the time to smell a flower.
Yeah. But it's the
As
kind of
they
thing you
say,
might smell just walking down the street. Someone might have some in their front garden, and you might just pass it. You might not even think about it, but it would definitely slightly improve your day, especially in London. Like
for sure,
better than
for
the
sure,
normal smell.
you bet. Um, my number 4 is the smell of your house when you return from holiday.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
It's that kind of, it's like when, I mean, it's sort of different now because there's always someone here. So if I come back, it feels like it's been, like it's always kind of that sort of, it's unfamiliar, which is also always a weird thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say it's never bad. I never walk in and go, oh man, this is bad smelling house. But like it has a kind of a newness to it, and also an idea that it does have a smell. You just are so used to it that you've kind of got rid of it somehow.
Yeah.
And I always find that bonkers that you walk back and then suddenly your house has got this kind of, oh yeah, it
Yeah,
smells a house.
it's crazy. It's that thing is that you can't smell your own house, but if you go away for a week or something, you can come back and smell your house, and that's a tricky thing. You know what I mean? Like we don't have that
Mhm.
with other things. Like, you can come home and see your house, you know, but you can see your house when you live in it every day, and you can hear your house and you can taste your house. You know, you can't smell it when you're there every day.
Exactly. And that's another one I think of as being a kind of Like now, if I've been somewhere, I come back, there'll already have been someone in the house, so it's less so, and I'm much more likely to just get back on with my day. But there is always this little acknowledgement I know. I go, oh yeah, house smell. Whereas I think when I was a kid, coming back to the house from holiday would be like kind of wild. It would kind of keep me going for hours. The kind of, oh yeah, it smells of house. I forgot about the house smell.
That's a good one. My number 4 is a really obvious one that's very popular, probably lots of people's number 1, but it is coffee. It's the smell of coffee being made, the smell of coffee in the air, right? But what's weird about that is that I don't drink coffee. Like, the taste of coffee is, I'm not bothered. Hot water with some stuff in it. The taste to me just doesn't anywhere near live up to the smell. The smell is like I'm saying, it's top 5 smells. It's outstanding. I'd happily have the smell of coffee brewing around all the time. It's great. But yeah, I'm not a. I don't. It's to me that's like a. I can't think of another thing where I love the smell but don't love the taste. You know what I mean? Like it's fine.
I think
but I'm not into it, but the smell is fantastic. Whereas all the other sort of cooking smells that I also like the eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. Though I think coffee is a. I drink coffee and I enjoy coffee. I think the smell is slightly false advertising. I think it promises more than it ever delivers. I think whatever that drink is that they're roasting, that they've done a kind of they've done a switcheroo on you at some point and gone, yeah, that's it. It doesn't quite feel like you're getting the full taste of coffee. Do you like coffee flavored things?
Yeah, coffee.
See, I think that's it.
Coffee and walnut cake, coffee chocolates. Yeah, I'm into it.
I think that's closer to the smell of coffee than the actual drink coffee is.
Yeah, but you think that about
and also
strawberries.
if you inhale yeah, but that isn't strawberry. I've never had a strawberry that tastes like strawberries.
Let's not go there again.
Okay. Check out fruit for more of this argument. But like, I think you can inhale a coffee, and go, whereas the drink itself is kind of like it's it's not quite the smell. And I enjoy a coffee. It's just it's not quite the promise of the smell of a coffee, of a roasted bean.
It's one of those estate agent smells, isn't it? Along with baking bread, it's like
Exactly.
sell your house, put on some coffee, bake some bread, and don't fart. Like sell your house. Which, if anything, is bad. Estate agent, recommend it. It's a great smell. Don't let estate agents put you off it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because I guess even by association, you might be put off.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're good smells. A couple of good smells. My number 3 is kind of quite an obvious one, really. But it's clean clothes. And I think specifically, it's not just clean clothes. I guess clean actually is a nothingy smell. Whereas probably what I like really is detergent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that like I want it to smell of something. Like as far as I'm aware, as someone like with like sheets specifically, if I've washed my sheets, I want them to smell a little bit nice when I go to bed that evening. I want to have a kind of, oh, this is why I've done it. It's got a nice smell to it. Most days, I would say my sheets don't smell. Hopefully, I'm sure they do before I wash them. But if you smell nothing, it's that's your kind of mean average, right? That's your. Whereas I think actually what I like is the smell of detergent. Something I did once, our washing machine broke, and we do like a service wash in a laundrette. And when that came back, they really were something. You do go, I mean, this cost a lot of money, but in a way, I would love my clothes to smell like this all of the time.
Wow.
But what you're actually talking about is detergent, I'm sure.
Yeah, but
sure
it's scented detergent. It's not the cleaning element of it. That it's not like the soapy element. It's
absolutely
the scent that they add, right? Do you use a fabric softener for extra smell?
I did when we had a dryer.
Okay.
But now in the kind of, I'm much more likely to either hang it outside in nice time, or we have a heated rail.
Yeah.
But we don't have a dryer anymore.
Okay. Yeah, right.
But there was a time, when we had a dryer, I would get them as because I enjoyed having an extra smell, and also just to have that kind of, especially in summer where a dryer is slightly too hot, and when you open it up, it's like having a kind of fragrant oven, like it's like a flowered oven, and you go, but you sort of get that sort of hot, slightly too hot rush from a clothes dryer.
I haven't even touched a dryer in many, many, many years. I've forgotten what they're like. I
Bad
just
for the
remember
environment, aren't they?
I
You
just
sort
remember
of
the
shouldn't
bit.
have them now.
I just remember the bit where you have to scrape out all the fluff from the filter thing,
Oh, that was the best bit.
and you've got all this fluff, and you realise how much your clothes are shrinking every time you dry
Yeah,
them.
you bet.
My number 3 is a obscure. Well, it's not obscure, but it's like a niche one. My number 3 is neoprene. Neoprene, specifically used for making wetsuits. Because like I got a neoprene knee brace thing that I've had to wear at various times in my life for my bad knees. But no, the neoprene I like best is a wetsuit neoprene. And if you have a wetsuit hanging up in a cupboard, in a wardrobe, which I do, yeah, when you open it, you get the smell. Like it's a smell. The smell goes everywhere. It doesn't rub off on other things really, but it just has the smell all the time. So it's a kind of rubbery smell. Like latex is not too far away, but for me, neoprene is the winner because I associate it with like surfing on a holiday or something, going in the sea and all that kind of thing. But it's this good. It's a it's a plasticky, chemically smell in a way, but it's like to me, it reminds me of like healthy, wholesome outdoor time. So I'm a big fan of the neoprene smell.
I've certainly got an idea in my head of what I think neoprene is and how it smells.
Mhm.
Whether I'm imagining or bringing to mind the correct one, I'm not sure. I'm thinking of neoprene almost is a bit like the kind of smell that you might have in a float in a swimming pool in a leisure centre. Is that a kind of neoprene kind of smell?
No, that's different. But yeah, I mean, it's in the same family. That smell is. Yeah, actually, I think it's different. You have to do some neoprene smelling next time you come around. Honeysuckle, yeah, neoprene. You have a smell
Yeah.
party.
Let's have some sniffs. Get some sniffs out.
Yeah, and then we'll eat some scrambled eggs and some fruit. We've got it all planned out.
What a day.
Yeah, neoprene. I think it's worth owning a wetsuit, if only just for the smell. And here's a top tip. If you go in charity shops, you'll often find children's wetsuits for very cheap because they grow out of them very quickly and they didn't cost that much in the first place. Whereas adults' wetsuits are more expensive and people don't grow out of them so much. So they hang around. So if you just want it for the smell, get a kid's wetsuit. Get really small. Get a baby wetsuit. Hang it in your car. Like on your rear view mirror. Little kids.
Or like an
wetsuit.
action man wetsuit. If
Yeah.
they've made one in neoprene.
I don't know if they'll be real neoprene. Maybe. Yeah, that'd be
It's
good.
made me think. I don't know if I've ever knowingly worn a wetsuit. I don't think I have, or unknowingly.
But you would know if you'd worn a wetsuit. They're quite
Yeah.
hassle to get on and off.
Yeah, I feel like I've wasted my life. Also, I genuinely fear what I'd look like in a wetsuit.
Everyone looks better
Like,
in a
I feel
wetsuit because it like
do they? Does
pulls
it
you
kinda,
in. It like it's like wearing a giant corset. I love it.
like a kind of Spanx kind of thing?
Yeah, I wear the same wetsuit that I got when I was like a teenager, and anyone who knew me as a teenager will know that I am considerably less in shape than I was as a teenager. Still fit the same wetsuit.
I was about to say, I think James Bond does that. I think he doesn't he have like one under his like tuxedo. Then I realised it's the other way around. And if he went into like his casino and he had a wetsuit with a tuxedo on top, he'd just be like sweating in the casino.
And that's a dry suit. That's a dry. So the whole point of a wetsuit is it holds the water underneath it.
Yeah, it's the opposite. He has
a dry suit, like a scuba dry suit, and it keeps the water out.
So he does his swimming. He goes up to the casino, unzips, and he's already in that kind of gear.
That's dry suit. I can't tell you how a dry suit smells, to be honest. Never had one.
My number 2 is, I'd say old comics. But I mean, a lot of people I know like the smell of old books. I would say, because it's not just quite old comics. It's sort of almost specific vintage. I think what actually is happening is paper is rotting, and I think there's certain age of comics now which actually do kind of are kind of stepping over into a kind of slightly unpleasant smell.
They're
Whereas I
overripe.
think now, yeah, they're slightly overripe, I think. And I think your kind of 70s, 60s comics are a bit like, I don't know if that is a great smell. I'd say you're kind of, even your sort of mid to late 80s now, I think is now your kind of, that's when they're in season. They take about 30 years, I think, but that's when, of course, they were printed on newsprint. Whereas now I think they're all on glossier paper, so we'll see how they age.
How the smell goes, yeah.
But there's sort of two things to it, because some also, it's interesting that some modern comics, I would say comics that are published by the Image imprint Top Cow stink. I think they're bad. I think they smell.
They use
I don't think they're great
stinky ink.
comics. I think they're using some sort of stinky ink and on a kind of glossy paper that it's not a nice smell to them. They're kind of quite bad smelling comics, and that's them new. Whereas I think as well you can get some sort of modern books, a lot of kind of picture books and graphic novels that have a real great smell to them as new. And I think there's something about, and I think with older comics, it's a mixture of the kind of paper that is ever so slowly rotting over many, many, many years, and with modern stuff, it's the ink. Whereas I think with comics there is this sort of magical kind of Venn diagram where both things are that you're kind of, what you're getting is sort of an ink smell, which is particularly nice, with a kind of paper ever so slowly decomposing. So there's a certain air where you're kind of mixing the ink, like I was saying, lots of modern stuff that have, and I think it's not, people talk about they like the smell of old books or the smell of books in general, whereas I think with comics, I think the difference is there's so much ink on the page that you are really getting a nose full of it if you really want to. Some comics smell are better than they read, as well. There's like better ones that you kind of go,
sure,
that's a great smelling book. That's
yeah, there's millions of comics that I would smell but not read.
Exactly.
Like, you could fill a room with them and I'd smell the whole lot in one go, but yeah, I wouldn't read any of them, like if it was a bad batch.
The reason it's so high on my list is I used to smell, I worked for years in a comic shop, and you worked in a comic shop.
You just said I used to smell.
Yeah, sure.
I used to smell. I worked in a comic shop. That's what you just said.
Yeah, that's
you're just promulgating stereotypes. I mean, I used to smell. I worked in a comic shop.
But like, I would say why that's come so high on my list is that I had to work in a comic shop to be socially acceptable by how much I sniffed comics. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if I was just a casual customer, I think if I saw someone who was sniffing comics that much, I'd be a bit like, mate, what are you doing? Whereas I had to work there to get my kind of my intake that I wanted of how many I wanted to smell. And often it is a kind of like, you will kind of open a book or a comic, and oftentimes it is a real inhalation of what you're getting there. And especially sometimes, it feels sometimes with stuff from the 60s that you are smelling something from before you're born. Do you know what I mean? It's almost quite a rare sensation to go, oh, here's something that has been, especially ones who have polybagged it and kept it in a bag or whatever. It does feel like you are kind of, you're somehow time traveling in that moment, I think. And I think there is a sort of joy to smelling it. And that's why it's so high up, that I would continue to do it, even though I think it's kind of socially unacceptable to sniff books and comics and things.
But do you think you got into sniffing comics by they started you off on the Mossman, and that was like how they get you in?
Yeah,
That's the gateway drug of sniffing. And then you
yeah,
graduate to sniffing comics.
sure, yeah, yeah. I think if you were someone that if you went into a Lush shop
Yeah,
or something,
I'd
right?
pass out.
I guess you'd be like, but I guess that's a shop that's made for sniffing things, right? People go in there fully expecting to see people getting a nose full of produce or whatever they're picking up, their little products. They're getting their kind of everyone's sniffing everything, even though you're in a place where smells are overwhelming. So
Mm.
you are kind of getting this full on. You're probably not really smelling it in
Yeah.
its own context. But that's a shop where you'd expect the customers to go around sniffing just about everything they're buying.
Whereas in a comic shop, it looks weird.
In a comic shop, it looks weird, especially given, like we were saying, there's a stereotype involved with comics anyway. But it's probably not a particularly cool or nice thing to see someone sniffing a comic book,
Yeah.
and that's why I think it's got to be quite high up on my list because it feels like you're doing something that's slightly verboten. You're a bit like it's not really a cool thing to do, but I might. Yeah, it's certainly something I probably would do. I'd probably inhale it at some point or try and get a bit close.
When it comes to new books, the way that a new book will have a smell that it doesn't have when you've had it for a while, I've always assumed, but I haven't been to a printing press to check this out, but I've assumed it's the four edge trimming that creates the main smell you get from a new book. When they
Well,
slice
it's
down
sealed, you mean? Yeah.
sealed.
Like you mean like when it's like when they cut into it, it's kind of
When they
sealing.
slice down through the no,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
sealing it. I think they slice down through there, and that gives you all these little. It's a 500-page book. It's 500 little cuts, and that has a kind of sawdust, a little micro
Yeah,
sawdust
maybe.
kind of thing, and it has that smell, which is more like a sawdust, more like
Mm.
a lumber mill kind of smell. So that to me is what the new book smell is like. The four
Yeah,
edge
there's a
trimming.
definite thing, and I would definitely include. That's kind of why I said comics. There is something about new books and old books.
Mm,
I'd warn anyone off a top cow if anyone's thinking of taking up the hobby.
yeah,
But that's a bad one to start with.
don't sniff
Reading
them.
and sniffing.
Yeah,
Like I'd avoid them at all costs. But there's some really, I'd say like a lot of your kind of sort of fancier and um, kind of quite designy kids books and comics
hmm
for kids and adults that are quite expensive, well bound, kind of the ones that look like they're of certain quality are probably also using quite high yields of inks and things and different coloured inks,
yeah.
and they're always worth a good sniff if you're in a comic shop of new books. Old books, I think you're looking at currently mid to late 80s, depending on when you're listening to this, probably about 35 years is when they really mature, I think, a comic. So I think currently you're looking at mid to late 80s is your sort of prime spot for smelling comics, if anyone wants to take up the hobby.
The comic smelling hobby. Good one. My number two is a classic. It's baking cookies. And a bit like the coffee thing, cookies smell great when you've got one in your hand and you smell it. If it's just recently still warm, it smells great, like a chocolate cookie. But my partner and the kids, they cook fantastic chocolate cookies, like a double chocolate, like a dark one with chocolate bits in, chocolate chips in. They're fantastic, but the smell of that when they're baking, that's amazing. And you come home and it's happening when you come in the door. It's like, this is the perfect smell to come home to. Above coffee, above baking bread. I got a lot of baking bread smell, especially since COVID. When my other half has been on the sourdough bandwagon. So every other day has been like amazing fresh bread, amazing smelling fresh bread. That's fantastic. But baking cookies, you can't beat it. I mean, brownies is good. Brownies is probably on the level. Chocolate
Mm-hmm.
brownies, chocolate cookies for a chocolate fan. It's really amazing. If I could buy like an aftershave that smelt like that, I think I would. I think I would get it because I
Yeah.
haven't worn an aftershave since I was a kid, like since I was a teenager. Um, what was I thinking? But yeah, like I actually bought Michael Jordan's famously hideous smelling aftershave when I was a kid, because I was such a big basketball fan, a big Michael Jordan fan, and he launched this aftershave, and it's like, yeah, it's like famously a horrible smell. Still got almost a whole bottle because it was horrible. But I was hoping it was a valuable collectible, but it's not, because a lot of other idiots like me bought it at the time.
Yeah, I thought. I mean, I've never really worn aftershave or kind of sort of fragrance, but I do like it, and I am attracted to nice smells. I was thinking today, maybe I should get into this. Maybe I should be getting into some fragrance stuff. You're right, though. I think baking bread is a great smell by all, and there's no reason, there's. I'm sorry. There's every reason why it's a classic, but I do think it's sort of you add something when you add something sweet because you get something, you get that plus.
Yeah.
And one I nearly put in, but then I realized I don't actually like it, is that I like the smell of, I like the smell of a warm donut, whereas I actually find that sort of donuts are kind of often cooked in that sort of. It's actually a bit too fatty when you smell donut cooking. You go, oh, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
When you get those kind of donut stalls on like beaches and things, you go, actually, that smell isn't that nice.
No.
But in my head, the smell of I'm like, oh, I love the smell of donuts. Whereas actually, the cooking donuts isn't great.
No,
but I think you're right.
Same with waffles. I was going to say, like, if you have like a Belgian waffles, the smell of them actually cooking is like, not sure I want this. When you've got it in your hand and the smell is slightly less, you're like, oh no, this is good. But that's because the oil is smelling. You know what I mean? The fat that it's cooking in is smelling. That's what I think.
Right. I think you've nailed this. I think a cookie or brownie is the midpoint. It's something I was almost trying to find something like that myself. Something that's baked bread plus. But then when you get, that's what I was doing. I was trying to find a median. I was going, no, but when you go donut, it's not.
No, I think
can't have it on my list for
because
that reason.
That's the oil. I think it's baking cookies is for me the master smell of cooking. The
I think
one.
you've nailed it. I think you've nailed it.
It's not my favorite. That's my favorite smell overall. It's even better than that.
We'll get onto it. My number one smell is, I think it feels like a cop out, and again because I feel like I'm quite bad with fragrance, so I'll just say specifically a strongly scented hand soap. I love it, and the main reason I love it is, again, it's sort of socially unacceptable, but I love a hand soap so much that if I have it, I'll struggle not to keep smelling my hands.
You must
like
a particular smell.
That looks
surely.
weird.
I
figure there is. I can't figure it out, but like certain ones, it's essentially ones that hold the scent. Like most hand soaps have a scent, and you can do it while you're washing them. It's the ones that when you do it, your hands are now smelling of that nice, whatever that nice smell is. And it's that thing where it's a bad look to be smelling your fingers and your hands.
Yeah, out of context, it looks like you're just enjoying the lovely soap smell, but what you look like is you look like you just put your hand down your backside and you're smelling.
Exactly.
That's what it looks like.
Exactly. It's a terrible look, and again, it's like the comics. It's a socially unacceptable look. But if I've used some really nice scented hand soap or something, like for the next half hour, I'm basically, my fingers are going to be like, wafting under my own nose as I'm kind of surreptitiously trying to smell my hand. And it's socially unacceptable, but it's irresistible at the same time.
You can always do that. There's some acceptable hand to face things you can do, like, just putting your finger below your nose, like in a bent sort of angle way, that you could be like, oh yeah, That's like a classic way of smelling your finger, without looking like you're smelling your finger.
I'm sure I've done it many times. I actually once went on holiday. I had a weird thing where I was doing some gigs, and was it in the West Country somewhere? I think was it Polperro? Where's that? The kind of west coast, and
Cornwall, wasn't it?
Cornwall, yeah. And I did 2 gigs over a couple of nights. I was doing some kind of preview gigs, and it was a very nice gig. When I got there, it's a kind of very small town when you actually get to the place itself, and all they've really got is like, they've got like a local shop, and I realized I hadn't brought any like shower gel, so I was like, oh, I need to get something. And in that shop, the only thing they had left was like was one of those ones that's like it advertised itself as being like zero added, nothing added, and it's one of those things where you go, it's completely scentless. There's no scent to it. It's just zero. There's no smells. I guess it's meant to be super sensitive skin or something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing added to it, no specific scent to it. He was like, fine, that's fine, it's still gonna wash, whatever. And it's such a weird feeling because, you can sort of wash and you can lather up, but there's no scent to it whatsoever. And it really gave that impression to me, like I felt like I wasn't properly clean because I don't have that sense of having washing with a nice smell.
Yeah.
And I was a bit like, never again, never getting this stuff again. And so there is something about feeling clean and a clean smell, which does come from something that's scented. I guess it's like the detergent again on clothes. It's almost, to me, that's the proof of something being clean, even though, but essentially if I hang the clothes out, by the time I bring them in, they don't really smell of anything.
Yeah.
But they're clean because I've just washed them. It's that sort of thing, right? It's actually the scent that almost gives me the reassurance of something being clean.
Yeah,
I felt a bit rotten all weekend. Like, this feels a bit.
Don't smell.
I feel like enough. I want to smell. I don't smell clean enough.
Yeah, I get the science behind that. The if you smell of soap, if you smell of detergent, then it proved that you're clean because you don't smell of something else. Like your
proves I've had a wash.
Your real self.
Exactly. You know what I mean? No one wants to smell like themselves.
No. My number one is kind of smelling like yourself, but not myself. It's kids' heads. Kids' heads. My kids, best of all, right? And people often say babies' heads are the best smell, but my oldest is 6. It's still good most of the time. I mean, she has very thick hair and long hair now, and on a hot day, doing some exercise, going out on the bike or the scooter or the roller skates or any other thing like that, with sweating and stuff, that doesn't smell so good then. But for the most part, she's still in the game as far as nice head smell. And it genuinely, because it is socially acceptable to smell your kid's head, at least up to 6. I haven't tested it further than that, but they often sit on your lap, or you're carrying them, or you inadvertently smell their head or loads. Unlike with anybody else, pretty much. I mean, maybe your romantic partner, you might, but not when you've been together for a while. Like, I mean, like head smelling is less of a thing, I think. But with the kids, it's like it happens. That you're sitting on your lap. You're watching the TV together. You're reading a book. They just come and pestering you, and you're trying to use a computer. Whatever the thing is, their head's right there in front of your nose, and you just go, and it's great. It's a fantastic smell. It's like, it smells like my kids. They all smell pretty similar, kids, I think, having looked after other kids, being a kid. I know kids smell pretty good, right? But your own ones are going to smell the best because you've known their smell since the minute they were born. And it's changed over time. The babies are something. People say babies because babies' heads are so nice and soft and everything with the little downy head.
I think there is with babies. I think babies do have a certain smell that's a kind of. There is this sort of sweetness to it. I almost want to say like toffee-ish or something. Like a kind of. I think there is something.
I think it's a bit milky.
Kids.
It's a bit milky.
Maybe it's the milkiness. Yeah.
Milkiness. Kids are so milky. Babies are so milky. Yeah. But I mean, when my oldest was born, she had some suspected sepsis after the birth, and so they put her onto antibiotics straight away, like with a cannula, like right away. And when we were in hospital, we stayed in hospital for a few days, and so for the first whatever it was, 3 or 4 days of her life, she didn't smell wonderful. She didn't smell like her. Because the antibiotics were like coming through her. You know what I mean? Like they were like coming out of her pores. The smell of it was this chemical smell. It was horrible. And I associated it with with her not being okay. You know what I mean? With her being on these,
Mm.
what, you know, it's strong to have antibiotics when you're 0 days old. And when she came off them, and quite rapidly, she stopped smelling like that. And then she just smelled fantastic, especially once she was old enough that we could give her a wash. You know, it's really supposed to wash kids until I can't remember how long it is, a week or two, something like that. And then she just smelled fantastic. But I had I I had a course of antibiotics in the last year or two, and that same smell was like on me.
Ah.
You know, it's not with every antibiotic, but it must be some particular thing or some reaction in your body or something. And it was horrible, and it gave me this flashback to this smell, that one of the worst smells, from worst associations of a smell, because it was all about the sort of perilous health of this tiny newborn, you know. So that's another reason I think where smelling your kids and them smelling good and healthy is just like a fantastic thing. So that's the smell for me that you just can't beat. Like if I want a nice smell, it's so reassuring.
I think you're right. Actually, I think kids in general do smell nice on an individual level. I'd say where that doesn't work is I can think of some of my worst experiences have been like on the tube where there's like a group of school age kids going to a museum or something in high vis, because then it's like you're on a tube carriage and they are all farting. And
Oh,
it's this incredible, like, oh my God, it's that kind of like, it's almost like I've got to change carriage here. It's like, so you sort of look at them and they're all in their high vis, and you think, and they all look like little kind of, now they've got their high vis on, they all kind of look like guys that work on like a road or something.
yeah,
And you think, oh, these kids look cute. And
mini
it's all
mini
like,
construction workers.
and you're, yeah, you're kind of looking at them and it's like it's a nice thing to see in your day, and just watching little kids and their behaviors and things messing about. And it's a nice thing to see on a tube. But then as soon as like it's not like one of them farts, it's like they're all constantly farting.
Yeah.
It's just this sort of like, it's quite overwhelming. And at that point, that is when kids do not smell good.
No,
And that carriage is horrific.
this happens all the time. I will
Little bombs,
genuinely
little stink bombs.
smell my daughter's head and be like, "Smells so good," and they'll just be like, and you're like, "Oh, Jesus," you know, like you ruined that moment. So, kids' heads with caveats. That's what we're going to say. Kids' heads asterisk, because it's, you know, they can stink the place up. Kids, big time.
I guess heads fine, bums not great.
No, because it's not that. Because it goes everywhere. It's the microscopic molecules released by substances around us. We're the substances of
Yeah.
Charles Bum. Bad times.
Mm.
And that's my number one. I did have some other ones that are good. Matches.
Yeah, that's a good one. In fact, I'd say any kind of like I think a sort of, you know, when you go somewhere that has got like an open fire or something, it is great.
Yeah, mostly, yeah. A snuffed
I'm a
candle,
big fan of it.
similar. You know, when you just snuffed a candle,
Mm.
does the
And
little
then you have yeah, and yeah,
bit of smoke.
that's the waxy thing mixed with it, right?
Mm.
That's particularly good.
I got flumps. Do you remember flumps?
Yeah,
The marshmallows.
that is a
They
great
smell
smell.
fantastic, like a bag of them. Better than, like, if you're going to get marshmallows for cooking on the fire, that doesn't smell quite as good. But a packet of flumps, oof, that's the best marshmallow smell. I think that's the best sugary smell, best sweet smell.
The big one that I absolutely would have put on, it sounds kind of wild, is like one I'm really attracted to is petrol. And I was like, as a kid, I'd get car sick. And I think partly I was car sick because of the smell of petrol. And the most perilous bit of a journey would be if we had to refuel, because that was the bit where I'd be the most kind
Yeah,
of
totally.
like queasy. And yet, like those kind of things that you're sick on are normally the things that can put you off for life. And yet, I find I'm weirdly attracted to the smell of petrol.
I don't
Like
like it. I know it's very popular. People love it, but I still associate it with like feeling a bit car sick and then stopping at a petrol station and being like,
I
oh,
do, and I have it both ways where I'm kind of, wow, but there's something to it that I find quite attractive, but it can also make me feel bad, you know, too much of it. Um, what else have I got on my almost bacon, popular one, I think, but like that is a great smell. I think I was trying to think of foodstuffs that really make me feel. There's some really great. opposite me in a street, there's like a row of houses that all belong to Sikh families, and often the cooking smell from those houses are incredible if you walk past at the same time. But bacon is kind of king of that.
I think like a curry being cooked, not necessarily in the house you're in, because that's quite full on and takes a long way to go away. But like walking down a row of houses where there's a lot of curry being cooked, fantastic. That's the best. When I lived down in Whitechapel, it was just like walk down the road and just be like, I'm so hungry. This is the best smell. Yeah, that's a great one.
I like oregano being cooked in a sort of Italian-y kind of, that sort of smell is always a good one. They're the sort of best food smells. But also things like leather, I think is a very kind of attractive smell. Leather jackets and such like. And those kind of shops, when you go into, like, again, when you go into sort of secondhand shops or charity shops, that's the bit I quite like. Whereas they often also give you that impression of clothes that are just rotting a bit. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're kind of, these clothes are old and they're kind of rotting a bit, and they're giving off it's not unpleasant, but I think leather's the only one which is kind of crosses the Rubicon into something like, I actually like this. I think that's a good smell of leather.
I've got some bad smells. I didn't want to do like a full-on worst 5 because I think
we could get into disgusting territory.
There's some really awful stuff, like, because definitely humans can smell terrible for good reasons and for terrible reasons, and yeah. But a lot of people like to say that their favorite smell is after it rains, right? Oh, do you know after it rains? I love that smell. They don't live in London, right? Because after it rains in London, especially if it rains in the summer, right? If it hasn't rained for weeks in the summer and then it rains, but it's still warm and the rain doesn't last that long, it just reanimates all the bad smells in the city, like all the dried up dog shit and, like, bin smell and stuff laying around the street and the filthy pavements that haven't had a proper wash from the rain. Just enough rain in the summer to like reanimate all those smells and bring them back to life. It's the worst. And as they evaporate, as the water evaporates away, it takes it all up into the air, and you're just walking through a cloud of like the worst fruit salad of bad smells.
It's true. Often after it rains as well, especially if it rains hard, there's lots of places where I know during my walk to the station or whatever that you'll pass a bit where that drain's going to be overflowed and that is going to stink.
Yeah.
So you're going to have like a sewagey smell after a hard rainfall. Yeah, I think at best, after rain in London, at best you're probably getting a neutral smell. But yeah, it could tip over into bad.
Park, it could be nice. If it's a lot of rain and it's cleaned everything up, then it's going to be great. But that's a lot of rain to clean everything up in London. Another bad smell I've got is, have you ever had to wear a cast? Like, have you broken your leg or broken your arm or anything?
Oh, no, but I can kind of imagine.
So, like, when you wear a cast for like 6 weeks or something, if you had a bad break, right? 6 weeks, and then no air really gets in there, but some dampness and human flesh, and it can all go a bit yellow, and it's disgusting. And when they take it off, that's the worst. That's the worst, grossest smell. Disgusting, yuck. But then to bring it back in, another smell I really don't like, which I think is like the opposite. You were talking about, like, comic book smell, new book smell, that kind of thing. I tell you a smell I really don't like: photocopiers. Do you know the smell of photocopiers? That warm,
I could almost like that though.
No, I don't like that.
I can kind of get on board with that.
That's the ink thing again. It's the toner in photocopiers, and it's warm. And if you had like a freshly printed stack of photocopy and smell it, I don't like that. If I find it an unsettling smell.
Do you know what? It is quite metallic, actually, isn't it? That sort of there's something not quite right about it.
Like
leadish or something, like lead or metal or something.
It's like, do you know the smell of burnt copper? Like if you were cutting through a plumbing pipe or something, that smell of burnt copper is disgusting. That like puts me on edge.
Well, the one where it tips over, I guess, is the kind of like you brought up earlier, baking bread, great smell. Burnt toast, having a stroke. It's the kind of as soon as one goes beyond a certain point, it's a danger smell.
Yeah, that's true. And probably my worst smell. Well, it's not there are much worse smells. Let's be honest here, like
Mm.
dead animals and stuff. Terrible, right? Rotting animals. That's terrible. But the worst smell that you smell like relatively regularly, burnt hair. Burnt
Oh yeah.
hair. Like if you singe your arm hair on the hob, that's the most common one I do. You just get a little bit of it, right? But that is such a wrong and weird smell. The smell of burnt hair. It's disgusting, and it's always reminds me of at primary school we were doing a Diwali light dance, right? And we were literally, this is tells you how long ago it was. We were all holding tea lights in our hands, like lit, burning tea lights, right? And we were in the school library, which joined onto the school hall. We were going in to do our performance to the teachers and stuff, right? And we were all lined up. And my friend Tom's in front of me, Tom Fowler's in front of me, and in front of him is a girl with really long hair. And Tom's holding his things there, and the teacher comes down and lights them all. And like a second later, these flames just, because you know how hair burns, it just burns up individual hairs one at a time, like up the thing. And Tom goes, Bijal's hair's on fire. And Bijal's hair was on fire, and that's the biggest hair fire I've ever seen. Was a lot of hair fire going on. And the teacher came, and we were in the library, so the teacher started hitting her head with the book, just smacking her head with the book, trying to get it out.
How bad is it?
She lost a lot of hair.
Oh no!
From the longest point at the back on really long hair. Like she had like
Poor thing.
midway down her back hair at least, you know. And then we had to go out and do our light show thing, you know, like a minute later with just this smell everywhere of burning hair. And it was like a trauma for us, you know. I was right behind, and it was a trauma. And so always for me, that's my worst hair burning smell memory. So yeah, not a fan of the burnt hair smell. Wherever you are, BJ, I hope your hair grew back all right.
Me too. Me too. I wish you all the best. Crikey. I mean, yeah, let's not get into the worst things we've ever smelt. I don't think that's one we ever want to do, really.
No.
I probably know the answer, and it probably, I don't want to get into it, in fact. But there are we've had some bad smell experiences in our lives. You can't get to this age and not have some really bad.
Well, you could. You could have no nose.
And then how do you smell?
Awful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a shout out to the best joke. Why did the baker smell? That's the best joke, right? The smell joke.
Great smell joke.
Yeah.
I like that we haven't done a punchline. Look it up.
Just ask a funny friend for the punchline if you don't know it, or make it up yourself. You'll probably get it. That's what we do. My daughter has a kid's joke book, and she asks me all the jokes, the questions of the jokes, you know, and I like to just try and work out all the answers before she could say them, because that's a really annoying dad thing to do. So she'll be like, you know, and every time she's like, "Ah, you knew it again," and I'm like, "I didn't know it. I worked it out," you know. They hate that.
See, yeah, that would be annoying. I can see.
Yeah, I'm quite. Next time we do a comedy show, I'm going to come along and do all your punchlines before you get there.
Yeah. Good luck.
Oh, nice one. Well, listen, that's probably a shorter episode, mercifully, because
maybe
talk about the most inane things. But yeah, send us more. I think we're getting some really good ones coming in now. We've got some good ones coming up. I think we're going to get some more guests on.
Thank you again to Tom Harris for suggesting it. It was a good one, I think.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, tell your friends about the show. You know, it's like lots of chat on Twitter now. I see nobody seems to be commenting on Facebook, Instagram anymore. It's all on Twitter. So people on Twitter talking about the latest thing, and lots of chat about the eggs episode. That's definitely strong opinions held about that one. Good egg chat.
I'm glad. I was worried it might be, you know, a bad one. I was worried it was excluding vegans or something.
Excluding. You keep missing opportunities. Come on. Can't be leaving them laying there like that, like you said.
Laying.
Anyway, we didn't do many smell nose puns today, so lucky everyone. But I have hidden 2 smell-related records in the background for the YouTube.
Have you?
Yeah.
I can see one.
Anyways, we'll see you next time for some more list offs.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.